G'day, how are we all? And welcome to a 2024 build guide for the Satsuma in my summer car. So in this video, I'm going to be doing a full build. That's including the suspension, engine, interior, exterior, wiring, tuning, aligning, etc. Before you build the car, there's a few things you're going to need before you begin. So the things you're going to need from Timo when you get here is an alternator belt, 3 brake and clutch fluid, 1 coolant, 1 car battery, 1 motor oil, 1 oil filter, 1 spark plug box, and 2 car light bulbs. And obviously when you're here, you may as well get some food, get some sugar, get some kill you going. And yeah, that's about it. So, thank you Timo. And fuel, don't forget. And grabbing the wheels from the abandoned mansion, or, which I recommend, buying a new set of wheels. So what we're going to do is get in here and we're going to first start off with the subframe. And basically we're just going to put that right here, like so. This can be a little bit tricky, so just try to do what I do in the video and it should work for you hopefully. We're also going to need our toolbox here because we need to be able to, do everything up. And for the subframe it is a 10mm and we've got 4 bolts that we got to do. We got one here. And there is one that's sort of hidden, but it's under the subframe, but it's like somewhere here. Yeah, it's about there. So just follow where the subframe sort of goes in under the car, and then there it is. Same on the other side. Next up is the steering rack, which is this thing over here. And this goes on top of the subframe at the rear here. And this is a 9mm, and there's 4 that we got to do. There's pretty much 2 on each end. Next up is the steering column, which is this thing here near the rear and front bumpers. This goes simply inside like that, and this has 2 8mm bolts that we got to do up, and it's connected to the steering rack. So there's one at the top here, well there's one at the front here, which is easy to see. And there's one that's sort of hard to see, but it's basically behind. So there's one at the front there and one behind. So you can sort of see it. But yeah, it's pretty much just next to each other like that. Next up is the wishbones, which are these things. We've got a front right and a front left. Also, when you're, putting stuff on the car, make sure you do them up all the way. Otherwise, you're just going to have a bunch of problems, really. And for the wishbones, it's a 10mm. And there's only 2 that we got to do on each wishbone. Next up is the spindles. We also got a front right and a front left. And pretty much there is 1 bolt that we've got to do, which is a 12mm. And this one can be a little bit tricky, especially for new players. So pretty much just find the center of the spindle, come down until you see the bolt appear. I know a lot of people have trouble with this one, so make sure you just sort of center yourself and then come down and it should pop up. Once again, there you go. Next up is the steering rods, which are these things here. Also got a front right and a front left, and these pretty much go onto the steering rack. We're going to leave them undone for now until we get the struts in, and then that way the strut connects up with the steering rod, and that way we can do it up. Next up is the disc brakes, which are these things here. That goes on just like that. We're going to leave these ones undone for now because once we do the half shafts, which is going to happen very soon, that way once we put the half shaft in, we'll do the disc brake to secure it in place and then do up the other bolts for the half shaft. Next up is the half shaft. There's pretty much 2 of these. A lot of people get these confused, but pretty much you want to have them facing this way. So pretty much this end here connects up with the gearbox on the engine, which isn't in the car, but this end here you want to have going into here pretty much. So just line yourself up. Boom. Just like that. Very nice. Put it in. We're going to grab our 14mm and do up the disc brake just to secure the half shaft in. We got the half shaft in and we got the disc brakes. While we're here, we may as well do the other half shaft bolts as well. Now, personally, you might be wondering, why am I screwing into nothing? Well, it really doesn't matter, because when you put the engine in, the game will sort of recognize that the half shafts are already connected to the engine. So pretty much it doesn't matter if you do it now or later, but I like to do it now, just get it out of the way, and the game recognizes it anyway. So yeah. Next up is the struts. This one can be a little advanced, so just stay with me. So pretty much we've got a front left here, and we're going to put this just sort of above up here. Boom. I'll sort of bounce up like that. Oh, okay. And do the other side. We're going to do the steering rod bolt first, which is a 12mm. And you can see how we got the strut now that's like lined up with the steering rod. Pretty much we do that and it should move. There we go. You see how it just sort of shifted to the left a bit? That's what we're looking for. Boom. Again, it sort of locked itself into place, which means the steering rods are now connected to the struts. Next up, we're going to get ourselves a 10mm, and we're going to come up to the top here, and we're going to do these 3 nuts here. Same on the other side as well. Just got 3 we're going to do. There's those done. Those are now done. We're now going to grab ourselves a 9mm, and we've got 4 bolts on the back of the strut here. As you can see, there's 2 bolts there that we're going to do up. And there should be another 2 on the other side here. Same with the other side as well. We've got 4 that we've got to do up. Alright, that's the struts done, and that there is the front of the suspension done. Now we're going to be moving on to the rear of the car. So we'll start with the trail arms. And these pretty much just go on the back here, like that. Pretty much you want to have them facing like this, and then just look down a bit on the ground, and boom, there you go. We're going to move our toolbox to the rear since we're working down here. And these have 2 12mm bolts that we're going to do. These ones are a little tricky as well. As you can see, there's like a little hole there, and you can probably, yeah, you can see the little bolt there as well. So we'll do that one. And then to the right of that, there should be another bolt. And boom, you can see that bolt is sticking through that hole now, which is good. Same on the other side as well. Quite tricky because it's quite low to the ground, so you can't really see that well. But pretty much there's one there and there, so they're pretty close to each other. Alright, that's the trail arms done. Next up is going to be the coil springs. These require nothing but simple handwork, and that will pretty much bounce the car up a little bit. There we go, same on the other side. Perfect. Next up is the shock absorbers, which are these things here. We've got 2 of them, and these ones can be a little bit tricky as well. But pretty much we want it to be facing upright like this, so we've got 1 bit there and we've got 2 down here. And this, you basically want to get it to sort of fit in that hole. So you sort of want to align it by that hole there. So have it facing up like that, and just sort of move around till you get the check mark. Just like that. Same on the other side as well. Just try to line yourself up with the hole. Yep, there we go. Starting off with a 12mm, which is the easiest, which I've already got. And pretty much this bolt is on the inside. And you can see that there's 2 nuts that we've got to do. One by the little electrical connection, and just one on the other side here. There's those done. And now we've got 2 that we've got to do up. You can see there's like a little bolt there that needs doing up, which requires a 6mm, which is quite small. So there's 2 that we've got to do, which is again tricky. So there's one that's visible, and there's one basically on the other side of that. See how they're kind of close to each other? Trust me, I've made the mistake of forgetting this one that's on the inside, because it's just, you can't see it at all. You know what I mean? Alright, that's that done. For the final piece of the rear suspension is going to be the drum brakes. There we go. And these are a 14 mil. And I just got one big bolt right in the middle of the drum brake. And there we go. Next up is the wheels, which you got from the abandoned mansion, or maybe got a bought set. But for this video, we're going to be using these. Now, I will mention this. These wheels have a certain tread. We're going to check the tread using the ruler from the toolbox, just to see when these wheels are going to end up failing on us. So, start with you, 1%. Yeah, awful. Awful. So this is 1%. This wheel is toast. Yeah, I wouldn't even bother using it. This one is 65. That's 54. And the bottom one is also 1% as well, which again is useless. I reckon what you should do is not use these wheels anymore. Since these wheels are from the abandoned mansion, I reckon instead of bringing them straight home, I reckon you drop them at Flatari's and you get him to put new tires on them. So that way you can come home and put the wheels on without having the risk, for example, like here, how these are only 1%. Because as soon as you put these old wheels on, they're going to deflate. 2 of them. Either put new tires on these or just buy, you know, your own set of rims with new tires and then put them on. For the sake of this tutorial, we're going to be putting on the bad wheels. We're not going to be driving with them, obviously, but you get the point. Now, you don't need a jack when you're putting the wheels on for the first time for the car. Boom, just like that. Same on this side. And to do those up, it is a 13 mil. And there is 4 that we've got to do on each wheel. Alright, and that's it for the wheels. So that there is all of the suspension you've got to do for the car. You know what? Since we're here, we may as well do the alignment for the wheels, because pretty much if we push the car into the shed, it's just not going to work, really. You're going to have the car veering off and it's going to go into the pit, and you don't want that at all, really. We're going to save ourselves the trouble now, and we're going to just do it. I usually leave all the alignment and tuning at the end, but I think I might make it a little bit more convenient for this tutorial. So we're going to grab ourselves a 14 mil here, and what we're looking for is this little nut here. And pretty much you can only use a spanner for this, not a ratchet. You can only use a spanner. So what we're looking for is we are going to be going down on our mouse wheel here, and we're going to be scrolling all the way down till the wheel stops moving, pretty much. There we go. So that wheel stopped moving. So now with that done, we are now going to scroll up 60 times. So pretty much just move your mouse wheel click by click to where you get up to 60. So 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that, you know, nothing crazy. And you want to make your way up to 60. 60. There we go. So that's 60 clicks, and by the looks of it, it is pretty well straight. We're going to do the same for the other side. So once again, come down here, and we're going to scroll all the way down until the wheel stops moving. There we go. The wheel stops moving. It's on a funny angle. Now we're going to go up 60 clicks. There we go. 60 clicks, and that is pretty straight. So that's the alignment done for the front wheels. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our toolbox, put that out of the way for now, and what we're going to do now is we're going to carefully move the Satsuma into the shed here. So just remember, your car's kind of got like no handbrake, so your car's just going to roll. So just gently push it bit by bit. Make sure your car does not end up in the pit, because it is a bit of a mess. So that there is all the suspension for the Satsuma. We are now going to be moving on to a much more advanced stage of building the car, and that is the engine. Alright, so with the engine, we're going to start off with the block, which is just down here by the gearbox. And we want to flip it up, right, just like that. And we want to find ourselves a crankshaft, which is this one here. And this goes pretty much just on top like that. Well, it's technically the bottom, but we've got it flipped around, so, you know. And to secure the crankshaft, we are going to need some main bearings, which are these things here by the rocker shaft. There's 3 of them. Main bearing number 3 goes to the far left. Main bearing number 2 goes in the middle. And main bearing 1 goes off to the right. Grab our spanner set here. Get that out of the way. For the main bearings, it's a 9mm, and there's 2 bolts that we're going to do on each end of the main bearings. There we go. Main bearings are done. Next up is the pistons. So now what we're going to do is we're going to flip the block around and we're going to look for our pistons. So sometimes if you're lucky enough, you can actually get a piston that's on the shiny side. But for example, none of these is shiny at all. So these all are like pretty worn. I'd say like around 50% like worn. You want to get these replaced as soon as possible, really. It's not a huge priority, but it's definitely a priority you want to, you know, focus on. But pretty much these pistons go in each hole as shown. And to do these up, we're going to flip the block around again. And there's some nuts that we're going to do on here, which is a 7mm. And there is 2 nuts that we're going to do on each piston. There we go. That's the pistons done. All right, so what we want to do now is flip the block again. And we want to grab our head gasket here and pop it on just like that. Next up is the cylinder head, which is this thing down here by the oil pan. And this goes right on top of there. Make sure you don't forget your head gasket, because I've done that in the past where I've forgotten to put the head gasket on and I put the cylinder head on first. And then once I've got the whole engine built, I realized the head gasket, oh no, because it's right next to the rocket cover. So I sometimes forget it myself, so don't do that. These are a 7mm and there is 10 in total we've got to do. There we go. That's the cylinder head done. Next up is the headers, which is over here by the right next to the starter. These things here. And these pretty much go on the front, just like that. And these are an 8mm, and there's 5 nuts that we're going to do. There should be 2 on this end here. Now, they are a little tricky to see. So you can see there's 1 there, and there's 1 at the bottom here. And there should be 1 right in the center here at the top. There's none at the bottom, just the 1 on the top there. And then again, on this side, there's the 1 at the top. And 1 that's hidden just on the bottom. That's the headers done. So what we're going to do here is we're going to grab our motor hoist. So this might be a bit tricky, but we want to put the engine on the motor hoist here. As you can see, this doesn't work at all. You can put it maybe on the bench, but it is a little bit tricky. But I think it's easier if you just get the grill. So we want it facing just like this. There we go. I just heard a little click. I'll just try and redo it again. Bit hard to hear, but pretty much once you see these bolts appear, that means it's ready to do up. So to do those, it's a 10mm. And you can see there's 1 bolt there and 1 there. So just do that 1 there. And then do up this other one. Boom. There we go. What we're going to do is we're going to carefully just move the hoist over a bit and lift it. You want to be very careful when you're moving the hoist around with the engine on, because if you move it too fast, you can kind of glitch out the hoist and the engine a little bit. So just try to avoid moving the hoist as much as possible. Next up is the rocker shaft, which is this thing here next to the alternator. And this goes on top of the cylinder head. And to do these up, they are an 8mm. And there is 5 that we've got to do. There we go. So that's that done. Might move this a little bit just in the light so you guys can see it a bit better. Since we have the engine at this stage and we have the rockers on, we may as well do the rocker shaft alignment. So what we're going to do is grab our screwdriver here and we're going to go over by these little screw heads here. Now there's a couple of ways you can like sort of align these, but personally I like to do it the simple way where you just go all the way down on your mouse, and then once it stops moving, you go up by 7 clicks up. So we're going to start on this end. We're going to scroll all the way down until this stops moving. Yep, that one stopped moving. And we're going to just do this first step with all of these first. So with all these no longer moving and all the way down, on each individual rocker, we're going to go up 7 clicks. Boom, just like that. And we're going to do the same for the other side as well. Boom, that's the rockers done. Yeah, it's that easy, really. You don't really need Flataro to do it for you. It's honestly just that easy. All right, so with the rockers done, we are now going to get the rocker cover for it, which just goes right on top like that. And that is a 7mm. And we've got 6 that we've got to do. There we go. That's the rocket cover done. All right, next up is the spark plugs. So we're going to get our spark plug box and press F to get all of our spark plugs out of the box. And let's just grab them, and we're going to come over to this side of the engine, and there's 4 holes that we're going to need to put the spark plugs in. Doesn't matter which one they go in. It's all, you know, random. So put that in. We're going to do the same with the other spark plugs. Alright, so those are on, and there is a special tool that we need to do them up, and that is a spark plug wrench, which you can find in the spanner set. And pretty much you just scroll up with your mouse and they just go in. And make sure these are all the way in, because if one of them is loose, you're going to have starting problems and other electrical problems, which you don't want. So double, triple check that they're all the way in. Next up is the camshaft, which is this little thing here. And this is a bit tricky, but what we want to do is get it into that little hole there. And pretty much just by facing it like this, just went in. Just like that. For that, it is a 5mm, which is the smallest spanner I think you're going to be using for like this whole engine. So there's that. And there's pretty much just 2 bolts that we're going to do. The camshaft. Pretty much it's just those 2 bolts, which is pretty easy. Next up is the camshaft gear, which is this little thing here. And this goes on the front of the camshaft, just like that. And for that, it is a 10mm. There we go. And once you start seeing it moving like that, that means it's all the way in. So what you're doing now is you're actually aligning the camshaft. Pretty much this little marking on the camshaft gear. You want to align that with this little mark here and that little mark on the crankshaft. So by scrolling up, you can move it. What we want to do is we want to carefully see how they're not perfectly straight. So just be very careful. Boom. So that there is perfectly straight. So that lines up with that, and that lines up with that. Well, these 2 are already lined up, so they don't really matter. But this has to line up with that. That's the most important part. If you do not align this correctly, your car will just basically explode upon starting up. So you don't want that at all. And it's best if we get this out of the way and done. And to lock that camshaft gear into place, we're going to be using a timing chain. And that just goes over just like that, as so. And to cover this all up, we're going to be using a timing cover, which is this thing here. That goes on the front, just like that. There we go. And to do that one up, it is a 6mm. And there is 6 in total we've got to do. There we go. That's that one all done. Next up is the water pump, which is this little thing here. And that goes on the top of this timing cover here. For that one, it is a 7mm. And there is 5 that we've got to do. For that water pump, we are going to need a pulley for it, which is the water pump pulley. That just goes right on top of the water pump. And that is also a 7mm. And there's only 4 that we've got to do up. Next up is the crankshaft pulley, which is this one here. And this one goes on the bottom, just like that. And for the crankshaft pulley, it is a 11mm. There we go. Next up is the alternator. This pretty much just goes off to the right here. So grab you and just boom, just like that. We're going to start off with an easy one, which is a 7mm. And this one goes up to the top here. So you see the alternator. You got this. Oh, I'm already not happy. This goes up here, and there is just that one bolt that we've got to do for that one. But there is a hidden one, which a lot of people always forget, and that is the 10mm that's actually behind the alternator. So if you come around here, boom, there's that little nut that we've got to do. And that's it for just securing the alternator. So what we're going to do now is we're going to grab our alternator belt, and we're going to pretty much just put it on the front here, just like so. We want to move the alternator with our hands, and what we want to do is scroll all the way down on our mouse until it stops moving. Boom. So now what we want to do is scroll up 2 clicks. Just like that. You don't need to move it anymore. Now to secure that, we're going to now use a screwdriver, and be careful not to move the alternator. What we're going to do is use the screwdriver here to do that screw in, and that now has secured the alternator in place. So if I try to move it by hand, it ain't gonna work because it's secured in. So that's the alternator done and aligned. So when you start the car, you shouldn't be getting like an annoying squealing noise. Next up is the distributor, which is behind this old oil filter, which I don't recommend really using. This goes on the front of the engine, which goes into that hole, just like that. And this is also done with a screwdriver. Now, this distributor is adjustable. Now, really, the only way of knowing how to adjust it properly is by sound. So for now, we're not going to adjust it at all. We're just going to screw it into place so that way it's not going anywhere. And what we want to do is when we start the car up, we want to hear for the noise. What we do is we loosen this up just by 2 clicks, and then we adjust the distributor around by a hand to hear when the ringing noise stops, and that means it's good. So we'll do that later in the video. Next up is the engine plate, which is this little thin plate here. And now we're moving on to the other side of the engine, and that goes on just like that. And now we want to grab the starter, which is off to the right here, and put you basically just by that hole there, just like that. And to do that one, it is a 7mm. There's one bolt that's easily seen here, but there's also one that's quite hidden, which sometimes I forget myself, but you can, if I glitch through the block here, you can actually see there's a bolt there on the underside. There you go, that's easier. So there's one there and one there that you've got to do. Next up is the flywheel, which is this here. And this pretty much just goes over the plate, just like that. And this is a 7mm, and there's 6 that we've got to do in total. Now we're going to be doing the clutch, and what we do is we pretty much assemble the clutch. So we've got the cover plate, we've got the pressure plate, and we've got the disc. Now the disc is replaceable, so if your clutch ends up, you know, going out, you can easily rip out the clutch, disassemble it. You can easily replace the clutch disc. We're going to start off with the pressure plate going to the cover plate, and then the clutch disc going into that. And boom, there you go. There's the clutch. And for that one, it is a 6mm, and there is 6 bolts that you got to do. Alright, so that there is the clutch complete. Next up is the oil pan. And this goes on the bottom of the engine, like that. And we'll start off with the 7mm bolts. So there is 4 on each side, 8 in total that we're going to do on the oil pan. Now there's one that's kind of hidden by the starter here, so don't forget to do that one up. And now for the big one, big bolt. Now you want to grab yourself a 13mm, and we're going to do up the big bolt for the oil pan. Make sure you do this one in, because if you put oil in, it's just going to come out the oil pan, and you're going to waste yourself a lot of oil. So you don't want to do that. Yeah, so that's that done. Next up is the gearbox. This one here can be a little bit tricky to do, but this goes on facing this way, pretty much. Now we're going to get the hard one out of the way, and that's by grabbing a 10mm, and we're going to do the hidden bolt that's just at the back here. There we go. There's that one done. And for the other bolts for the gearbox, it's a 7mm, and they are pretty much here, 3 on each side. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to actually grab the inspection cover here, and we're going to put that on first, because if we do the bolts up first and then put the inspection cover on, it won't work. So we'll do it this way first, and we're just going to do these up. That's that one done. Next up is the drive gear, which is this here. Pretty much this drive gear goes into that hole here. Boom. To do this one up, it's a 6mm, and we've got 7 bolts that we're going to do. So there's one that's up here, and then the others are around at the drive gear. Next up is the carburetor, which is this thing here, and this goes pretty much like on the headers sort of thing, just like that. And the carburetor is an 8mm, and there's 4 nuts that we've got to do, which can also be a bit tricky. So you've got 2 on here, so there's one at the top here, and there's one that goes down to the bottom. It's almost like doing up the headers, but this time you've got 4 instead of 5. Boom. Next up is the air filter, and that goes right on top of the carburetor, just like that, which is a 6mm, and there's only 2 little bolts that you got to do. There we go. Next up is the oil filter. Pretty much this just goes right below the distributor, just like that. And with your hands, not with a tool, but with your hands, you just want to scroll up and that will just go on. And to undo it, you just scroll down, but make sure this is all the way on, because if it's not, you're gonna get oil leaks, and you don't want that at all. Next up is the fuel pump. So the fuel pump just goes onto this thing here, like that. And the fuel pump is a 7mm, and there's 2 that we've got to do. Boom. Alright, and there we go. That there, ladies and gentlemen, is the engine complete. Now, for the final step of the engine, we are now going to be getting the engine into the subframe. So, we're going to carefully move the motor hoist around to the front of the Satsuma. Pretty much, we just want to line it up very straight, so that way it's just easy to get in. And what we want to do is just use the right click to lower it. Wow, this might actually go in first try. Oh, bit too low there. That's actually almost spot on. We need to go a little bit more forward though. There we go. And then lower it again. Can bring it a bit more back. There we go. So pretty much what we're looking for is we're looking for these. So these here indicate that the engine is in a good enough position to be secured in to the car. So I'll just show you, for example, if we lift the engine, boom, see how they're not there anymore? So when the bolts aren't there, that means the engine isn't close enough to the subframe to be connected. So let's just lower it in. Boom, there we go. They've appeared again. We'll just lower it a bit more. You want to get it as close and even to the subframe as possible, because if you connect it while it's still far away, you can sort of glitch things out, which you don't want. So that's pretty close. I'm pretty happy with that. Now to secure that, we are going to be using a 11mm. There's these 2 that we've got to do, and there's also a back one that you've got to do, like that one there. So we'll start with the front ones. Boom, she's in. So you hear that little click, that little thump, I guess. That means the engine is in the Satsuma. Boom. All 3 bolts. Also, these have already been done up, the half shafts. So the game recognizes the half shafts are connected to the gearbox. So that's all good. So the final step now is to undo the hoist from the block, which is a 10mm. And there's 2 we've got to do. Boom. Let's now move the hoist out of the way. So that's it for, you know, building the engine and getting it into the Satsuma. We're now going to be working on the other engine stuff. So getting all the brake line-ins, the clutch line-in, the battery, the electrics, the cylinders, the master cylinders, and yeah. So we're going to be doing that right now. Alrighty, let's get started on some other engine related stuff. Let's start with the electrics, and pretty much we put that just a bit over to the left here, so on this wall. There we go. And let's get our spanner set here, and it is a 8mm, and there are 2 bolts that we got to do. Should be 1 on each side. There we go. The electrics are now in, so they're all connected up to the distributor and the spark plugs. Next up is the fuel strainer, which is this one here. Also goes on the left side, somewhere in this corner. There we go. The fuel strainer is also an 8mm, so we only got 1 to do, which is easy. So that's all set up. Next up is the radiator, which is over here in the corner. Goes in facing this way. Boom. That one is a 7mm, and there are 4 bolts that we got to do. Be 2 on each side of the radiator. Alright, that's that one done. Next up is the hoses for the radiator. Starting off with hose 3, which is at the bottom. So we kind of want to get it to face this way. We kind of want to glitch ourselves through here. We're trying to connect the hose from here. So if we can sort of line it up to do that pretty much, that will come down and around sort of thing. Next up is hose 1. This one's pretty easy. Pretty much it just goes on the top. Just like that. Goes from there to there. And next up, lastly, hose 2. This pretty much goes from there to there. Boom. There we go. Those are on. And to do them up, you need a screwdriver. Pretty much, they're just here. So, pretty easy to see. You can't really miss them. Also, when you're doing these up, make sure you do them up all the way, because if you don't, you're going to have leaks, and that's the last thing you want. Now with this hose, there's only one you've got to do up. Like there should be one there, but there's not for some reason, but you can only do one on this hose, so just letting you know. But on this other hose, there's one there, and there's one there. Next up is the clutch master cylinder. That's the brake one. I'm looking for the clutch one. There we go. This pretty much goes over here by these little bolts that are sticking out here. Let's get both of them on. There we go. And to secure them in place, it is an 8mm, 2 on each master cylinder. Now they are a little tricky, but you can pretty much see that there's two. This one here, so there's a bottom one and a top one. So these ones up real quick. Boom. And then this one's got two as well, one on the right side, and there should be one on the left side as well. There it is. It's a bit hidden, but you know, make sure you don't forget them. And a big one I usually forget within my tutorials is the 9mm, where you come around here and then boom, look at that. There's a bolt there and there's a bolt there. So make sure you do these ones. They are a 9mm. Only one you got to do on each pedal. I think I've forgotten this twice now in my tutorials, so don't make that mistake. So when you're braking or clutching and there's nothing, that's probably why. Next up is the brake lining and the clutch lining. These pretty much just go up on the back here by the firewall, like that. We'll get the clutch one in as well. There we go. And for the clutch one, it is a 7mm. And pretty much there is two that we've got to do. This one. And then the other one goes into this one. So this one was for the clutch lining, not the brake one, but the clutch lining. So now we're moving on to the brake lining, which is also a 7mm, and there is 11 nuts you've got to do. 11. All right, so keep count of how many you're doing. We're going to start off easy by doing the wheels first. So pretty much we're looking for the line that comes down into here onto the spindle. So this is the nut we're looking for. That's one. Do the same for the other side. There it is. Now we'll move on to the back. These ones are a little hidden. So pretty much you got the line that comes up and then boom, there it is. Same on the other side as well. There it is. So that's 4 that we've done so far, and those are the wheel ones. Now we're moving on to the other ones that connect up to the master cylinders. So we'll start here. So that's 5. These two here. 6. 7. There's one up here as well on this one. 8. 9. 10. 11. Boom. So that's the brake and clutch lining done, and the cylinders for it as well. Next up is the fuel tank, which is this one here. What we want to do is come to the rear of the car and put it on like that. Easy peasy. To hold that one in, it's an 11mm. We've got 7 bolts that we're going to do. Should be 4 on the back here and 3 at the front of the fuel tank. There we go. And now there's this nut that we've got to do as well. Make sure you don't forget this one because it's actually pretty important. And that one is a 12mm, just to size up pretty much. And come over here and boom. Make sure you do this one all the way, because if you don't, fuel's not going to really circulate through that well. Next up is the fuel tank pipe, which is this one here. And this one pretty much goes in this little hole here, just like that. And boom. That's it. All right, now we're going to move on to the exhaust. So we're going to start with the actual exhaust pipe here. And what we want to do is have it sort of facing like this. Grab like close to the middle of it. Just pick it up like this. And what you want to do is line it up to where it would normally fit, right? About there. And to do the exhaust, it's a 7mm. We got 3 bolts we're going to do up for the exhaust. So there's one at the rear here. And then there's 2 all the way up into the headers. Next up is the exhaust muffler. And that goes on the back here. Now, a lot of people have trouble with the exhaust muffler. Usually it likes to fall off when you put it on. Hopefully it doesn't do it for us. If it does fall off for you, just give it a moment and then try to put it back on. If it doesn't want to go back on, like the check mark doesn't want to come up, just give your game a restart and it should be fixed. This one's also a 7mm and this is held in by one single bolt. Next up is the gear linkage, which is this one here. And what we want to do is get under the car. What we want to do is we want to have the gear linkage sort of facing this way. And we want to get under here. And what we're looking to do is sort of have it around here. Pretty much. Boom. There we go. So it goes from there all the way to here. And for the gear linkage, it is a 5mm with 3 bolts that we got to do up. Now this one can be a little tricky. So pay attention. If you follow the gear linkage, boom, there's 2 bolts that we got to do here that go straight into the gearbox. Right, that's 2. Now the third one, we come back a little bit, follow this up, right, and off to the left, boom, there's one there. That's the other bolt. There's nothing there, it's up there. So there's 3 for the gear linkage, and that is now done. Next up is the battery, which you can get from Timo's, and we're just going to put that in there, like so. And boom! That's everything for just other engine related components. And next up, we got to do the interior. All right, so with the interior, we are going to be starting off with the steering wheel. This one's pretty easy. This goes right onto the steering column, just like that. That there is a single 10mm bolt. Or nut, I mean. Boom. Next up is the gear stick, which is this here. And this goes just in front like that. And the gear stick is a 6mm. And there are 3 bolts that we're going to do. 2 at the back here. And 1 at the front here. Next up is the handbrake. The handbrake can be a little tricky because you've got to do it in a certain order. So if we place this just here, the first step you want to do is secure the handbrake to the car, which is an 8mm. And there are 4 bolts that we're going to do up. There we go. So that's all held in. And for the other bolt that we've got to do, it is a 5mm. What we want to do is come under the car. What we're looking for is that there. So there's the handbrake. There's the line. And it goes into this little Y joint here. And pretty much this is the bolt we're looking to do. Next up are the front seats, which is a 9mm. So we'll start off with the passenger. And what we want to do is we want to be careful when we're putting these in because it can be a little glitchy. Just like that. Boom. Same with the driver's seat. Let's get that in nice and careful now. There we go. And with the 9mm, there are 4 bolts we're going to do, which are kind of hidden. There is one at the front here. And then there's one down this way. And there it is. Now, it's exact same thing, but on the other side. Next up is the rear seat, which is actually outside. Here it is. Now, this one, you also want to be careful not to try and break the car or anything. So what I like to do is just sort of jump in and then place them. Now, the rear seats, there are 2 bolts we're going to do. There's one on the left side here. And there is one on the other side. Boom. That's the rear seats done. Next up is the back panel. Now, you can either put the back panel in or the subwoofer panel if you've got like subwoofers in the car. I don't have the subwoofers yet, so we're just going to be using the back panel. And this just goes in at the back, just like that. Next up is the dashboard. Now, this is a big one because this one can really just ruin everything for you. So you want to just be super, super careful when putting this in because you can actually break your windshield. Pretty much, that's how you put it in. Very safely. And to secure the dashboard to the car, it is a 10mm. And there are 2 bolts we got to do. There's one in the middle here. And then there's one actually hidden into the glove box here. Next up is either the clock gauge or the RPM gauge that you found on the little rally track that's sort of near Grandma's house, I believe. Yeah, a bit after Grandma's house. Pretty much you install either one into here. We're going to be using the clock gauge. So put it in there. Let's flip this around. Let's grab our 7mm and let's do up these 2 bolts. There we go. Next up after that is the radio. And that just goes into this hole here. We also want to put this in the car very carefully as well because it can also like destroy everything. So I'll just show you, for example, see how the car's moving? And I'm sort of bumping it around. You don't want that at all. So try to avoid moving the car a lot like that. And let's just put the dashboard meters in. For the dashboard meters, we are going to need a 6mm. And there are 2 hidden bolts just here in the glove box. That's everything for the dashboard meters. And that's it for all of the interior pieces. Next up is the exterior. And we're going to grab ourselves a 6mm for the hood. Try and line this one up as well because it can be a little glitchy. So just put it around where it would normally fit. There we go. Now, we don't have access to the bolts because we need the hood open for that. And in order to do that, let's open up the hood lock. And when we open it, it won't fall off like the doors normally do when they're not bolted in. So don't worry about it. And pretty much there are 4 bolts that we're going to do. 2 on each side. There we go. And boom. That's the hood done. Next up are the fenders, which are these ones. We got a fender left and we got a fender right. Oh, okay. That can sometimes happen with the fenders. So try to put them on properly so they don't sort of fall off like that. Gotta be kind of gentle with this car sometimes. I probably shouldn't have closed the hood. But let's open it up just so we can actually see the bolts that we're going to do up. And for the fenders, it is a 5mm. And there are 5 in total we've got to do. So there's one there, and one here. And then there's 2 down there. But we'll do these ones first. Those 3 done. And now there are 2 more that we're going to do. There's one here just under the headlight. And then there's one right down here. And we'll do the exact same thing, but on the other side. And there we go. That's the fenders done. We can now close the hood. Next up are the doors. We've got a door right and a door left. These can also fall off if you don't put them on properly. Now, with the doors, you don't want to hold left click when you open them because that can happen. So, to prevent that, what we're going to do is put the door back on. What you want to do is you simply just want to click. Not press, but click. Just so it does that. But you don't want it doing that. So, you want to do it far enough to where it locks into place sort of thing. You got to time it right. Instead of the doors opening and closing on themselves, you just open them far enough to where they, you know, lock into place sort of thing, but not completely break off. And to do the doors, it's a 10mm, and there are 4 bolts we're going to do, which are pretty easy to see. There's 2 down there, and there's 2 up here. Alright, there we go. So the doors will now no longer fall off when you fully open them up. Next up is the boot lid. This one's pretty easy. Grab it like this and try and line it up. This one you can just fully open up without it falling off. And for the boot lid, it is a 6mm. And there are 4 bolts we got to do. And there's 2 there. And then there's 2 on the other side as well. There we go. There's the boot done. Next up are the bumpers, which are over here by the door. Now we've got a front bumper and we've also got a rear bumper. These ones may also try to fall off when you're trying to put them on, so just be careful. And for the bumpers, they are an 8mm, and there are 2 of them, which are kind of hidden, but I'll just show you. So pretty much, you see how there's like a gap here, and then, boom, there's a bolt right there. So that's what you're looking for. that gap, follow on the gap, and then there's no more gap, and then there's the bolt. So that's the front one done. Same thing with the back, where you're just kind of looking for that gap. There's less gap on this side. You can sort of see it, yeah, from this angle. You can actually see where there's like that little bit where it secures onto. Same thing on the other side. Look through the gap, and then boom, there's the bolt. There we go. Those are the front and rear bumpers done. Next up is the grille. We're going to put that right on the front, just like that. And to hold that one in, it is a 6mm, and there are 2 bolts, kind of hidden as well. So pretty much it's just up in the corners here. So there's one on that side, and the other one is on that side. You can sort of see it, but not that well. Next up is the headlights. Now, if you've got the light bulbs, it's a good time to put these in now. So you just put them in on the back here. There we go. And these pretty much fit right there in the hole. So to hold the headlights in, they are a 7mm. Pretty much there is a bolt that's right there. You can probably see it. Pretty much on each headlight there is a bolt to the left and right of it. So you can see there's one there. And there's one to the left as well. Next up's the rear lights. Pretty much these go on just, you know, like that. No need to screw them in or anything like that, which is nice. Next up are the hubcaps. Now, if you do have your own wheels, these don't really, you know, they don't really matter. But for the sake of the tutorial, and, you know, if you have these actual wheels, you may as well put the hubcaps on because they look pretty cool. There we go. And also, I sometimes forget, but you've got the mud flaps as well that you can put on. These ones fit pretty much back here to the front right, fits on the back just like that. It's a bit dark. Front left, then here right. Oh, that one did not want to go on. There we go. And that's it. That is everything for the exterior. The car is now really coming together quite nicely. Let's now move on to doing the wiring. All right, so we're now moving on to a bit more of a tricky sort of stage of building the car, and that is the wiring. So let's grab our wiring mess here, and let's just put that to the side. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to sort of prep for the wiring. We're sort of going to disconnect a few things just so we can actually get the wires to appear. So we're going to start off with the headlights. Now, yeah, we just did that. We probably should have left that till we did the wiring afterwards. So a 7mm for the headlights. I don't think you can actually pull out the headlights with the grill in, so we have to do the grill as well. There we go. So that's the grill off. Headlight off. That one as well. So it should look like that. And now all we're going to do is grab ourselves a 7mm, and we're going to open up the hood. So now what we're looking for is the starter, and what we're looking to do is undo this one bolt here. Because if this bolt is done up, we won't be able to actually connect the starter up. So we need to have that undone for us to do the wiring. And that's everything we need, really. It's as easy as that. So let's grab our wiring mess, and let's start with the easiest part, and that's the rear of the car. And let's go from rear mains connector to the fuel tank, which should be a hole here for it. There it is. Boom. Next up are the rear lights. So rear harness connector to rear light left, or rear light right, and then from you to you, and boom. That's it. That's pretty much it for the rear of the car. Now let's move on to the headlights. So with this one, so what we're looking to do is we're looking to find the front lights connector, which is this thing right here, just under the battery. So what we want to do is press F on that and go to headlight left, and then same thing again, front lights connector to headlight right. And now that's it pretty much for the headlights. So they're good to be put back in, but I'm going to leave it till the end of the wiring. So now what we want to do is front lights connector to main harness connector. Now we want to go main harness connector to the regulator, which is this little white thing here. There we go. Now we want to go main harness connector to the positive terminal. Now we want to go main harness connector to the ignition coil. Next up is the fan radiator connector, which is this one here. So press F on that, radiator fan connector to the main harness connector. Now let's move on to the inside of the car. And now what we're looking for is a fuse box, which is located right there. So fuse box to instrument panel 1. Now fuse box to instrument panel 2. Fuse box to ignition switch. There we go. Now we want to go radio harness to the radio. And now we want to do dash harness connector to light switch. Now if you have an AFR gauge, which sits in the corner here, or the other gauges here, pretty much you connect that up to the dash harness connector. We don't have them currently, but you can hook them up to the dash harness connector, and yeah. But if you have gotten the extra gauges and the fuel mixture gauge, pretty much this is how you install them. With the extra gauges, you put them just up here, and with the fuel mixture gauge, you put it right in the corner like so. To wire them up, you want to go dash harness connector to extra gauges and dash harness connector to AFR gauge. Alright, next up is positive terminal to the starter, not the battery ground connector, but the starter. So, yep, there's that. Now we want to go negative terminal to the battery ground starter, like that. And then last but not least, regulator to the alternator. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is how you do the wiring like a boss. Now, before we do anything else, we want to grab ourselves a 7mm and do up the starter. So now there's a nut here that's appeared since we've done the wiring. That there should be a 5mm, which it is. Boom, that's the starter all hooked up. Let's now start doing the headlights. Alright, with the headlights in, let's now put the grille on. Last but not least, let's grab ourselves an 8mm and let's hook up the battery, shall we? So let's go positive and then negative. And boom, there you go. That's the battery all hooked up. Alrighty, so we're moving on to the fluids now. We're going to start off with the brake fluid, and then we're going to do the motor oil, and then the coolant, and then the fuel. So to start off, let's open up the hood, and let's open up our master cylinders here, all 3 of them. Now we just want to grab one and fill them up. Now once done with them, just dispose of them. These are a little tricky to fill up sometimes. You got to get them on the right angle, sort of thing. See, for example, that one's just not wanting to fill, even though, there we go. Now make sure everything is all filled up, which it looks like it is. That's good. So this one's still got a little bit left in it. After filling these up, you can actually check the levels of them, which is good. Now we can just close them back up. Alright, next up is the oil. So we're going to open up the rocker cover cap here. Let's grab our motor oil here and fill her up. There we go. So there should be a little bit left in this motor oil here. So don't get rid of it. So that's the oil now. Now before we do anything else, let's check if we're actually getting any leaks. I've not seen any driplets. Usually if you've got an oil leak somewhere, you should see either one straight line coming out or some driplets. And so far we're not seeing anything, which is good. Now the coolant is optional. Personally, I don't really buy coolant because it's a bit of a waste of money. You can actually use your own pee for coolant and you can still get away with it. So it really doesn't matter. Like for example, I'll just pee in it a little bit. As an example. See how it just fills up? We're out of pee now, but you know. But yeah, you can still you can use your own pee or you can use coolant. Either way, doesn't really matter. They're both the same. For this video, we're going to be using coolant. There should be still quite a lot in here still, so don't get rid of it. That is the coolant done. Next up is the fuel. Make sure you go to Timo's and get yourself some fuel by filling this up all the way, because usually the amount of fuel that's in this already is maybe just enough for you to get there, but it's risky. It's not really worth the risk. You may as well fill the jerry up, get the Satsuma up to like, I think it's a little under halfway. You can then drive up all the way there without having to worry about running out of fuel, and then fill it up all the way. So Oh, it's actually going over half. Okay, so it's a little over halfway, which is good. That's it. That is the fuel done. And that's it. That's the fuel, brake, clutch, motor oil, coolant. That's all the fluids done for the Satsuma. So the next thing now we got to do is start her up and see if she runs. Also, since you're building the Satsuma, you may as well get the fur dices because why not? You got to pop them on, you know, just for that look. Pop them on like so. Look at that. Car looks a lot better now. Alright, so with everything done with the Satsuma, it's now time to start it up. Let's get a screwdriver just so we are ready to do any sort of like alignments that we got to do, any tuning when the car is running. Choke out. Okay, electrics are working, that's good. And now, for the moment of truth. Oh, we have ignition. Okay, we can definitely hear the distributor. I'm going to fix that right away. So with our screwdriver, undo it by 1, and we're going to simply scroll up with our mouse. Oh, the noise has stopped. Pretty much I like to get it to where it starts making the noise, and then a little bit by bit, moving it until it stops. So it's making noise. Now it's not making any noise. Now, let's do it up. That's the distributor tuned. And let's just double check the alternator belt, make sure that's not jumping. Nope, that's pretty straight. That's good. Everything, it seems to be running pretty good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to let the car warm up because I think the air fuel ratio is really just not good. Oh yeah, it's really not good. Oh, the actual car stalled. Okay, that's interesting. The car just stalled. That's a first. That's probably because of the air fuel ratio, because it was showing 18, which means it's running way too lean. So we got to fix that. Yeah, the air fuel ratio was running like 18, like stable. So it's definitely way too lean. All right, so now with the car all warmed up, we should hopefully be able to put the choke back in. Okay, it's still running 18. Yeah, that's really bad. I don't know why that's doing that. So what we're looking for is a little screw on the carburetor, which is this here. And what we want to do is scroll just down. Doesn't really matter how much at the moment, because what we're dependent on really is the AFR gauge. And okay, so that's reading about 15.7. What we're looking for is somewhere between like 14.6, 14.7 is what we're really looking for. So we're gonna scroll down a bit more, maybe another 5 times, see if that works. Boom, that's actually not too bad. But it's maxing out at 14.7. That's pretty good. That's actually, I'm pretty happy with that. So you want it to sort of be like how it is now. It will jump around a lot, but if it's capping at 14.7, that's pretty good. So yeah, that's everything to do with like tuning and aligning. We got the camshaft gear, the alternator belt, the rockers, the carburetor, and the distributor. So that's pretty much it. We got the car all built, and that's how you do it. Now, if I do drive off, these wheels are going to pop because they're at 1% at the moment. But that's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching this guide. If this guide was helpful, be sure to leave a like down below. And if you're not already, be sure to subscribe to the channel because we're almost at 20k subs, and I cannot wait for that. That will be a massive, awesome milestone. But yep, thank you all so much again, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.